Hi friends, I'm Hannah, hello, and welcome to my first video. This one's horrible. I really wish I could start this channel by kind of going straight into the content that I actually want to put up, which is going to be predominantly reading vlogs, but I feel a bit weird not doing a like hello and introducing myself video, but at the same time find the concept of doing a hello and introducing myself video frankly excruciating. So I'm doing my best. Hi, my name is Hannah. I live in Newcastle, but I am not originally from here. I'm from London, sadly. What can I tell you about me aside from the fact that I like reading? I'm a Gemini, INFP, chaotic neutral, middle child. I have an excellent dog called Lewin, who you may meet in a little while. That's basically it. My handle is Hannah Lost the Plot because I have a genuinely terrible memory when it comes to like what actually happens in the books that I read, to the point where I will often have like pressed a book into a friend's hands and been like, oh my god, you must read this, and then they'll come back to me like a month later and be like, oh my god, yeah, I'm halfway through the book, I'm at the bit where like, you know, so and so does XYZ, and I'm like, no memory. All I ever remember of books is like the vibes, which is part of the reason that I wanted to start this channel actually, because I thought it might help me to talk about books as I'm reading them, and maybe they might stay in my head a little bit longer, but also just prove to myself that I have actually read them and that I'm not going insane. So by way of introduction, I thought I would share some of my stats from Storygraph, so that you can get a feel for the sorts of things I read. This is my moods. So as you can see, I am super, super chipper. I'm a happy-go-lucky gal. This like really reminds me of that National lyric. When I walk into a room, I do not light it up. That is my dream book. That's my vibe. Maybe I might have to challenge myself by like reading something hopeful and or inspirational, because I find it really quite sad that this is what I read, but also these are the books that I love. These are my top genres. Again, over the 2 years that I've been using Storygraph, I'm slightly surprised to see fantasy so high there, but I also know better than to argue with data and facts. So there is the fantasy, it is there apparently. The other genres I am absolutely not surprised at. Literary, contemporary, queer, they're very much my bag. So yeah, so this is sort of our first date, where I'm sharing some information about myself and hoping that I'm intriguing you enough that you want to spend more time with me. I thought, as well as running through those Storygraph stats, I would do the mid-year freakout hashtag characteristically about 4 months late. So for anyone who is only watching this video because they know me in real life and they're like lovely and supportive, it's essentially a list of questions. I can't remember who originally curated it, but if I can find it, I will link it in the description box down below. But it's basically 13 questions about the books that I have read this year, so it should give you a good little rundown of things that I have thought. I can't pick just one, so I'm going to pick two. These two specifically. So I'll start with Young Mungo. I mean, Douglas Stuart's follow-up to his Booker Prize-winning Shuggie Bain. If you have read Shuggie Bain, this is the natural next book from having read that first one. They are following different characters, but Mungo and Shuggie have a lot of similarities. I loved Shuggie Bain, and I loved this even more. I thought this seemed to have more sort of hope in it and more moments of relief, which actually sort of made the emotional journey through the book much much more impactful, I guess. I think especially the moments where the two boys, so this is about a young teenage boy called Mungo falling in love with another boy called James, and they are on opposite sides of the Catholic and Protestant divide in Glasgow, and it just follows their lives. It's a very intimate story. I think my absolute favourite bits in this were the scenes where it's just the two boys in the flat and they are sort of experiencing this growing love that they have for each other, and it just I mean, Douglas Stewart's writing is beautiful, and I thoroughly recommend. I do think if you haven't read Douglas Stewart before, you should read Shuggie first and then come to this, but just wonderful. And my other fave of this year so far is How to Be Both by Ali Smith. This is not only released this year, I shamefully only read my first Ali Smith book last year, which is mad to me because I read about 3 pages of There But For The last year and immediately thought, like, this woman is writing books for me, like specifically for me. I think you get that sometimes when you pick up a book and you go, this writer's style is just 100% what I love reading, and Ali Smith is definitely like that for me. So I am a bit mad at every single bookish friend I have who didn't force me to read Ali Smith much earlier. I can't believe I only read her for the first time last year. But the good news is that I have lots of Ali Smith to read now. I still have all those books in front of me. So this is the third one of hers that I've read. I've read There But For There and Hotel World, and now How to Be Both. I love this book. If you're not familiar with its structure, it's sort of a book told in 2 halves, and it follows 2 characters whose lives are unexpectedly interconnected. One half of the book is told from the perspective of a girl called George, I think George, whose mum has just died, and she's recalling this holiday that they went on to go and visit these paintings in Italy. And the other half of the book is about the Renaissance artist from the 1460s who painted those, or some of those pieces of art that they go and see. What's really interesting about this book is that it's the order that those 2 stories appear in. So you get kind of one half that's told from George's perspective and one half from the painters. Half the books that are published have the modern story first, and half have the painter's story first. So you actually get a completely different reading experience depending on which one you do. The version I read had George first and then the painter. I am actually really glad that I have such a bad memory, because I think in a year or so I will have forgotten enough of the detail of this book that I can read the other version of it and be like, I'm discovering that as a new book. But this is just, if you've read Ali Smith before, it's everything that makes her great. It's insightful, sort of stream of conscious, but like all of the like nonsense that no one would want to read in a stream of conscience has been like edited out, and just the brilliance remains. Yeah, I just love Ali Smith. I just love her. Woman can do no wrong. At least the woman can do no wrong in the small portion of her backlist that I have read so far. I don't read tons of series, but I did get through books 3, 4, and 5 this year of Matt Wesolowski's 6 Stories series. I should disclaimer this by saying that I know Matt in real life, so I can't be 100% objective about these books, but I do love them. They are the first books I've ever read. I think they're the first books ever written as a true crime podcast. So these are horror, thriller books told through a true crime podcast. So you're sort of discovering and unpicking the story through these podcasts, which is just a really interesting way of writing. Obviously, true crime podcasts is like a massive phenomenon. and this is a really nice take on that sort of part of the zeitgeist. And I also am obsessed with the covers. I think they're so cool. But yeah, so this is 3, 4, and 5 of the 6-story series, and I've got one more still to read, which is on my shelf, which I think I'm gonna treat myself to as a Christmas read. So that for me is this one, Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I have lost count of how many people whose opinion I massively respect have raved about this book. I'm so excited to read it that I'm a bit scared. I have never read any Julia Armfield before, but I've read little excerpts of her writing, but I've never read a sort of full book by her before. In fact, is this her debut novel, or has she got another novel? I can't remember. But I'm really excited to get to this, and I definitely want to get to it before the end of the year. Let me read you some of the blurb. Mary thinks she's got her wife back when Leah finally returns after a deep-sea mission that ended in catastrophe. It soon becomes clear, though, that Leah may have come back wrong. Whatever happened in that vessel, whatever it was they were supposed to be studying before they were stranded on the ocean floor, Leah has carried part of it with her onto dry land and into their home. So this is, I think, a sort of slow, creepy, as opposed to outright, like, horror-y book. Which is sort of the slice of horror that I like. I am not very brave, so big scary things I don't love, but creepy things I really like, and this sounds really creepy. I also heard from someone that like a lot of it takes place in a bath, so I'm just interested. I'm interested in a book that takes place in a bath. I hope you're appreciating my lack of consistency about how I say the word bath/bath. Obviously we're well into the second half of 2022 and the book has now come out, but this was my most anticipated release of the second half of this year. It came out in August. It is Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. Natalie Haynes is, I think, my favourite person who I have read who writes myth retellings. Natalie Haynes is a classicist. She's also a former stand-up comedian, and you can tell both of those things in her book. They are witty, they are well researched, they are nuanced, and I love them. And I am this far through reading Stoneblind. I'm really taking my time with it, but I am loving it as much as I thought I would. I've previously read 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, which I absolutely adored, which is a retelling of the Siege of Troy from the perspective of all the female characters. If you, like me, were disappointed by The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, may I recommend to you 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. But this one is doing something similar in that it's not just told from Medusa's perspective. It's not as clear-cut a narrative of that. It's told from these sort of multiple perspectives of various gods and humans and deities and everything in between who sort of have some bearing on the Medusa story. So what I like about that is that rather than just telling you the myth in isolation or a retelling of the myth in isolation, it really contextualizes it as part of the wider sort of canon of Greek myth. And I don't think I've read that many retellings that do that, where it really places it in the wider context of all of the other narratives that are going on at the moment. I feel like this is not necessarily required. Can you hear that wind? Wow. Yeah, I feel like you almost don't need to do content warnings for myth retellings because generally they're awful, and yeah, huge content warning for sexual assault happens a lot in this book, but I think Natalie Haynes deals with it beautifully, and I am absolutely loving it so far. I feel like I'm disappointed in how disappointed I am. I read Dune this year. I don't have a physical copy of the book because I listened to it on audio. It was not for me. I only read it because I wanted to see the Denis Villeneuve film adaptation, because he's a filmmaker that I really like. And I try and, if I think I might want to read the book, I always try and read it before I watch the film adaptation. Otherwise, all I can see when I read is the film. And, well, I still haven't seen the film, which I guess is all I can really say about Dune. Again, this was another audiobook. I listened to I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jennette McCurdy, which is a memoir. I guess the reason I'm surprised is that I only listened to it because it came up as a recommended listen on my Scribd app. I have since reading this book, I have seen it everywhere. But at the time that I picked it up, at the time that I picked it up, I hadn't heard anything about it, and I don't know who Jennette McCurdy is, or I didn't know who Jennette McCurdy was. I'm a bit too old for the iCarly generation of children's television, so it was a surprise to me in that I took a real punt, and I think it paid off. I enjoyed it. I think it was really well written. It was written with quite a lot of immediacy, and I do wonder if I would be interested to read another memoir from Jennette McCurdy maybe in a few years' time, because it was written very much in the aftermath of her mum's death, and there are massive trigger warnings in this book for eating disorder and body dysmorphia and controlling and abusive parents. But I thought it was, despite that being the majority of the content, I thought it was incredibly engaging. And Jennette McCurdy narrates the audiobook herself, which I always really like when I'm listening to a memoir. I like it when the writer narrates it themselves. Again, this is a new to me author, Patricia Lockwood. I read 2 books by Patricia Lockwood this year. Previously, not this one, I read No One Is Talking About This. It's just one of those titles that I can't get to stay in my head. And I liked that. I think it was nominated, shortlisted for the Booker, I think. And it was very good. I really liked it, but I loved this. This is Priestdaddy. This is Patricia Lockwood's memoir. And it's my favourite kind of memoir in that it's not sort of an autobiography that is spanning someone's entire life. It's quite narrowly focused on this period in Patricia's life where she moves back in as an adult with her husband, moves back into her family home, and her father is a Catholic priest, which might sound impossible, but he was basically some other kind of denomination priest, like a Methodist or something, one of the ones that are allowed the wife and children. And then he converted to Catholicism after his kids were born. So that's why he's a Catholic priest with a wife and children. And I absolutely love Patricia Lockwood's writing style. I get very similar feels from Patricia Lockwood as Ali Smith. It's funny and acerbic. And I just think the way Patricia Lockwood sort of perceives the world is fascinating. And because this is memoir, it's like you get to sort of see that perception happen in real time in a way that I didn't necessarily experience in her fiction, although I could tell that it was there. It felt like I kind of got it behind the scenes of how her brain works a bit more in this. It's hilarious in parts. I was like cackling, and there were so many bits that I was like reading to my partner out loud. But yeah, just generally really, really recommend this. I also want to do an honourable mention in this bit for Rachel Yoder. I read Night Bitch this year. I can't find my copy of it, which I think means I've lent it to someone, which is usually a sign that I've really enjoyed a book. But I really, really enjoyed that as well, and I thought her writing style was brilliant, and she's definitely going to be a new one of those authors where I will pick up anything that they write. I thought that book was brilliant. I just kicked the tripod and I've got no idea if I'm still in frame. What a professional. So I struggled with this one, and I've cheated a bit because I don't really get fictional crushes. It's not really a thing that I experience. However, I did read a book that revived a literary crush, which was this, Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville West's Love Letters. Pretty self-explanatory title. These are the letters written between Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville West, documenting their relationship, affair, friendship, all of those things. I have loved Virginia Woolf for a very long time. Vita Sackville West I only really knew of as a name related to Virginia Woolf, but I've never read any of her writing before, and definitely reading these letters made me want to pick up some of her writing as well, because I just, God, it made me want to write letters to people. You're like, God, what a beautiful thing to do. Who wants to be my pen pal? Because like, these were great, and I thought the collection was it was beautifully edited. So it is predominantly the letters that they wrote to each other, but in some cases it's also the letters they were writing to their husbands, who both sound like wonderful, supportive men. Can we just give a shout out to those two? Leonard, and I've forgotten Vita's husband, but he sounded like a babe as well. But they also put some extracts from Virginia's diaries are in here, where it helps fill in the gaps between some of the letters, and yeah, I just loved it, and beautiful, and Virginia will always be one of my original literary crushes. I think I don't favourite characters. I don't necessarily recall books with, in terms of how I felt about the characters. I think partly because I tend to be drawn towards fiction that has quite murky, morally grey characters, so it's difficult to sort of outright root for them, because most of the time they can be pretty terrible people. However, I do think the painter in How to Be Both is probably my favourite character that I've read this year. I think I don't really know how to talk about him, because I don't want to spoil it if you haven't read it, but he is pioneering and sort of unapologetically himself in a way that I think is just ace. So yeah, let's go with that. That is like the 4th time that I have kicked this camera, so sorry if I keep jumping around the screen, but I'm incredibly novice and I don't really know what I'm doing. Definitely Mayflies by Andrew O'Hagan. I loved this book. Again, I can't find my copy of it. I think I've lent it to someone. If I've lent it to you, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope it's making you cry. This was such a beautiful book. It's also the first book I think I've read that is about, as its main relationship and main theme, a adult male friendship. I don't think I've read a book about that relationship where it is the central part of the story, and this is exactly what Mayflies is about. It's about a man and his friend and their relationship, and it is beautiful, and there are parts of this book that made me like ugly cry, like not a solitary beautiful tear, like heaving, snotting, weeping, and I loved it. They're doing a TV adaptation, I think, with Martin Compston and oh, for fuck's sake, the guy who played Vincent van Gogh in the Doctor Who episode. Him. I'll put a picture of him here. It's books that made me happy this year, and I don't think it's going to surprise anyone. It's Heartstopper, volumes 1 to 4. Yeah, I mean, what do you say about Heartstopper except that it's just bloody gorgeous? Like, many people, I discovered these books because of the Netflix adaptation. I watched that very hungover one day and then immediately rewatched it, like episode 8, whatever, finished, and I just started episode 1 again. And then I bought the books. And I just think they're fab. I think they're gorgeous. They're my new comfort reads. Partly as well because there's just... I don't read a lot of graphic novels at all, so this is very outside of my normal reading zone, but I love how quick they are because you can just like if I'm having a bad day, I can blast through one of these in like half an hour and that's it, like day better. Well, I think it's these guys. So these are 2 collections, these are 2 titles from the Autumn Clothbound Classics series. Can I just say that if you also got caught up in the computer warehouse fuckabout that Waterstones has been for the last few months, then I'm sorry, and so have I. I ordered these, I pre-ordered them in June. They were supposed to come out in August. I got the Nella Larsen one in September. I got this one by Carson McCullers in October. I got it last week. And the third one that I ordered, titles. Passing by Nella Larsen, The Ballad of the Sad Cafe by Carson McCullers, and I also ordered Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner or Sylvia Warner Townsend? Sylvia, 2 names lady. So I'm really looking forward to getting to those, and they are beautiful, but I have noticed that Penguin have brought out their winter collection now, and I am still yet to get all of my autumn ones. But obviously it's fine, and I'm over it. Books I want to read by the end of this year. I have a few, and it kind of leads me nicely on to talking about some of the videos that are going to be coming up, hopefully, on the channel in the next few weeks. As I mentioned before, I have a lot of Ali Smith to get to, and I'm particularly looking forward to getting to her seasonal quartet, and what I think I'm going to do is a reading vlog for each one of those books. If you don't know, Ali Smith published a quartet of books, autumn, winter, spring, summer, and my plan is to read autumn in autumn, winter in winter, spring in spring, and summer in summer, along with doing some sort of classically seasonal activities. So I will have a vlog coming up soon reading Autumn by Ali Smith, and I might also chuck in a couple of the autumnal clothbound classics, and you know, maybe like make an apple pie, make some pumpkin soup, like throw myself into a pile of leaves. I'll do some autumnal things and I'll read this, and there'll be a video and you can watch it if you like. Then I also did on Storygraph, they have reading challenges every year, and I have 3 books that I still need to read for the Read the World challenge. I have the books that I want to read for them. So I have The White Tiger by Aravind Adiga, which I'm reading for India. This, I do really want to read this, but it has done that thing that drives me mad, where like the back is just blurbed reviews and not a blurb. So like, I was going to be like, I'll read you the blurb. I can't. It's not there. It just says, meet Balaram Halwai, the White Tiger, servant, philosopher, entrepreneur, murderer. Like, okay, that is still enough to make me want to read it, but like, where did all the blurbs go? So we'll have this one coming up in a reading vlog. I'll probably read all of these together in one vlog. We also have Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith. I'm reading this one for the Vietnam prompt. Violet Kupersmith is a Vietnamese American author, but half of this book is set in Saigon, and it is 2 young Vietnamese women go missing decades apart. Both are fearless, both are lost, and both will have their revenge. So yeah, it's a split timeline, which I always like in a book, if it's done well. So 1986, the teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family gets lost in an abandoned rubber plantation while fleeing her angry father and is forever changed by the experience. 2011, 25 years later, a young, unhappy Vietnamese American disappears from her new home in Saigon without a trace. And I heard Jen Campbell rave about this and a few other people. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that one. I always kind of feel like I want to read crime around Christmas. I don't know what that says about me, but there we go. And last but not least is this little slip of a book. So this is Streets of Lost Footsteps by Lyonel Trouillot. I never learned French, but this he's a Haitian writer. The last country on my list is Haiti. And even though this is tiny, I did flick through it earlier, and it's super, super dense. Like, there are no paragraph breaks at all. So I think this is going to be quite intense. It also sounds like a really intense book. It says, harrowing novel depicts a night of blazing violence in modern-day Port-au-Prince and recalls hundreds of years of violence stretching back even before the birth of Haiti in the fires of revolution. 3 narrators, a madam, a taxi driver, and a post office employee describe in almost hallucinatory terms the escalating chaos of a bloody uprising that pits the partisans of the prophet against the murderous might of the great dictator, deceased forever immortal. That is the name, deceased forever immortal. Which I think sounds brilliant, but also like a lot. And I think actually it sounds like these two are going to have similar-ish themes, obviously dealt with in different ways, but I'm really looking forward to that. So there'll be a reading vlog coming up where I read those, and yeah, that's me. I feel like I've been a really bad first date because I've just spoken about myself, but tell me what you're reading so that this feels a little bit like a reciprocal thing. That would be nice. I'll put the questions in the description for this and you can give me your answers. That would be nice. Yeah. Here ends this first awkward encounter. I will get better. I will maybe not sit on the floor next time so that I'm not kicking the camera over. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you want to watch?